I still love that intro so much. The ish right at the end. It's so us.
So us. And I was off task for a moment because I was thinking about how excited I am for today because our pre-video live camera conversation with Chris is just making me so happy. But then Annabeth starts pointing at his name and she's like, Mom, you spelled his name wrong. And I know it's because I was trying to say his name in my head and spell it at the same time. So I'm going to just own it in pure Carrie fashion, and I'll cross it out and correct it once we get Chris on camera.
It is a good conversation about his name. I'm going to add that to our drawing when we get ready to draw today. I'm excited.
Happy Saturday.
Yes. How was your week?
It was good. It was kind of laid back. Well, no, it wasn't. Lots of doctors doctor's appointments this week. And we also had the 4th of July. Right. Which was kind of like, yay, but also, you know.
And you had some photo bombing of Ring cameras this week.
Yes, we took a walk by my sister's house and we photo bombed her Ring camera. We didn't make her dog happy.
Oh.
We couldn't figure out if the camera went on when you walked up to it, which I think it does.
It does.
We ring the doorbell and her dog was not very excited to see us. He was not excited to see us, and then he was, and then we had to leave. And he
no.
Like, you left me?
Yep.
And you got your first full week?
I did. First full week in my new gig in my new school, and I love my team, and I'm excited. And I also don't know a lot, so we're there.
So a lot of combinations of a lot of different things.
Yes.
Kind of like Chris.
Yeah.
But all wrapped up into a lot of fun.
So let me introduce our guest. He is an advocate for all students and has a desire for them to see personal growth in their education journey. He currently supports teachers and students as the assistive technology specialist at, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, I should have asked, Loudoun Public Schools, where he served as an assistive technology trainer and speech language pathologist. He is the author and co-author of 3 books and co-hosts the podcast Talking with Tech, where they have conversations about augmentative and alternative communication. From horror movies to D&D Dungeon Master, he loves to spend time with his family and community. I'm excited to welcome and Doodle and Chat all about Chris Bugaj today. And that rhymes.
It does.
Hi there. Hey, thanks for having me, Carrie. Hi, Mandi. Thanks for having me.
We're excited for you to be part of this.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of it. It sounds like you did your homework. You know that I'm a dungeon master and big fan of Dungeons and Dragons and do the podcast and everything. So I'm really curious how you learned this sort of information. I mean, I'm out there on the web, so people know I have a Dungeons and Dragons room and stuff. So maybe that's how. But I'm excited to be here. I can't wait.
No, we take a lot of pride in doing really, we think extensive research on our guests. So we try to keep the questions different and unique, and they're just for you. Something that's going to just be, well, we really don't know what the Bull's going to give us, but hopefully it'll be an interview experience that is different than some of the other ones you've been on.
Super fun. I cannot wait. Do you pull from the Bull right now?
So we will in a second. So we have Anne's here with us, and Anne has been on Doodle and Chat with Friends with us. She's also a legendary Doodle and Chatter, as we were talking before off camera. We love that the legend, before Mandi and me. So she's been around. She's experienced the Bull as well as she's been here way back from the days. So we have the Bull that knows with us, and we call it the Bull that knows because it always seems to give us a question that's just right for our guests. So we're going to hand the Bull over to Annabeth, and we're going to pull from the Bull that knows, and we're going to draw and chat with Chris and learn all about him. And so we welcome our the friends that are joining us to draw along with us, to participate in the comments as we go on. And we're just going to have a bunch of fun.
Carrie, before we get started, I just want to say I brought some paper to do some doodling. I brought a pencil, classic, just going with a number 2 right?
Nice.
I did, once upon a time, we had a box with all sorts of colored pencils in it. And I went hunting for that because it's, I don't know if things happen in your house like in ours, but they disappear or they move into somebody's room and they go under somebody's bed or something like that. And I couldn't find it. So I do have another box of like markers that probably need to be gone through to see if they're dried up, that whole experience. So I've got a whole setup here ready to doodle along with you.
Awesome. Well, we're excited for that. All right, so we're going to turn our cameras on. Nice job. And so you can see I spelled your name wrong, and Annabeth caught it right away. I was just going to go on with the experience, and Annabeth's like, Mom, it's not the first time I've spelled something wrong. So I just learned to lean into it. It's just part of being Carrie.
Carrie, once upon a time, I watched this art show, and the guy on the show said there's no such thing as mistakes. There's just happy accidents, right? So
I might have heard about that guy. Yeah.
Happy accidents.
Happy accident. All right. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Here we go.
What is the most challenging part of being a Bills fan married to a Patriots fan?
Oh, you have done your homework. The most challenging part of being a Buffalo Bills fan in general is that you're always sort of, they get close and they don't necessarily win the big games towards the end. And then it's doubly difficult when my wife grew up in the Boston area and grew up a Patriots fan, is still a Patriots fan. The Bills have to play them twice a year and usually lose. Lately, things have been turning on its ear, and the Bills are doing better. But for years, I just had to eat it from my wife. Like we would post a picture. We kind of have a little tradition every time the Bills and the Patriots played, where I'd get my Bills stuff on, my wife would get her Patriots stuff on. We post different sort of like mock angry fighting. We're not going to talk on this particular Sunday images, and just have fun with it. But then every time we go to Boston and I have to hear it from her family, hey, how about those Bills who lost again, that sort of thing. So it's eating crow every single time you get together with your extended family. That's what's so hard. But the Bills are doing better. They're doing better. It's getting a little bit easier to talk to my wife's side of the family because the Bills are shining lately.
Nice. Uh-oh, did that stripe the wrong way? Oh, let's go with it.
So, Mandi and Carrie, what football teams do you follow, if any?
Well, I'm in I am just north of Kansas City, so Chiefs all the way.
Oh, Mandi, you've been the bane of the Bills' existence for the last couple of years.
Yes. And the town that I live in, we actually have the Chiefs training camp. And so we're actually gearing up for training camp. So town's getting ready.
Carrie, I'm going to guess you're a Chicago Bears fan, if at all.
I could give or take football. I'll sit and watch it. I understand how the game works, but I'm not like really care if anybody wins or loses about that.
Carrie, let me say that is certainly an evolution for me. So, Mandi, back in the day, I went to a little college just south of Buffalo, New York, being from Buffalo, called Fredonia. And Fredonia was where the Bills training camp was. And so I worked at a local movie theater. The Buffalo Bills would come in after practice at training camp. They'd watch half a movie because they had like a curfew. So they wouldn't even stay for the whole movie. But I got to meet some of the famous Buffalo Bills that way. Cool. And I was really into it back then. Now it's we don't like pay to watch it. We'll go to a game every handful of years. If it's on in the background, maybe we'll often do our thing on a Sunday and then come back in and just like look up the scores real quick. Oh, how did they do? Playoff time, it gets a little bit different. We might go out to eat and watch a game or something like that. But I'm with you, Carrie. It's sort of over the years, it has sort of dwindled as far as how important football is in our lives.
Yeah. I do remember growing up. I remember the Bears winning the Super Bowl. I remember that was a huge deal. I remember being in all that. But as times change. But Mandi, you're pretty tried and true. Like, it's Sunday and the Chiefs are on. Like, don't bother Mandi.
That's right. Yeah. And so we sometimes have people over to watch, not all the time, but I have a group of friends. And so we're always like texting about the game and talking about the game. So even if we're not together. Now, like I have a friend who is a Broncos fan and he lives here. And so we also give him a whole lot of crap about that because they're also terrible. So and so during any game that we're playing, I'm like, well, I see your team is still horrible and my team is still not. So although the Chiefs have their moments, last year I was shocked at the outcome because we started off rough.
Yeah, but they turned it around.
They sure did. Love me some football.
I think we're ready for another one. Okay. That's the longest conversation I've had about football in a long time.
Yeah.
Mandi, what are you using over there? Are you using Procreate?
I am. Yes.
Yeah. And Carrie, what are you drawing on?
I'm drawing. Oh, now that's why that looks so weird. I'm using a chunky Sharpie, which I'm going to change to my thin Sharpie, and that's just really big paper. Gotcha.
And then do you like take a picture of it and do you make it digital or not? Do you just hang it on the wall of fame behind you? What do you do with your art once you've done it?
I take a picture of it and tear it out, and then it goes and sits on the floor in a pile of other Doodle and Chats that I've had, which I should do something more with them. But we have we should do more with them. We could make books out of the Doodle and Chats that we have.
Yep.
Mandi, have you always used Procreate? Sorry, I'm asking the questions. Have you always?
No, that's okay. Absolutely. I didn't. I started with Notability because it was the drawing app that I had. And when I went to my Google Innovator Academy in Toronto, one of our coaches used Procreate and she sat us down and taught us how to use it. And I have been on that ever since. And that was 2016. So I've used it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did you find like there was a learning curve to it? Like you said, you went to a place and sort of learned how to use it.
There is a huge learning curve to it. And I still learn something new about Procreate every single day. I love TikTok videos about Procreate. I actually just have a folder where I save things in there when I learn about them. So I've learned how to make my own brushes and things like that. And so I like to play with Procreate. It's a lot of fun.
So quick story there, Mandi, about Procreate. So tying it back to Dungeons and Dragons. So a bunch of my friends came to visit our house and play Dungeons and Dragons. Like these friends that I grew up with since third grade are still my good friends. And being the dungeon master, they came across this puzzle in a dungeon they had to decipher. Essentially, it was like a code that they had to, like a different language, and they had to figure out the letters and kind of write letters over it. And there's 7 of us all together. So 6 of them in the room, plus me, who knew the answer to the riddle. And they all approached it differently. One of the guys who actually flew in from Chicago, Carrie, took a picture with his iPad, brought it into Procreate because he's an amateur. He's trying to break into cartooning and work in the. He's actually trying. He's putting together an entire portfolio to submit to the New Yorker. So he's working on, and he uses Procreate to make these drawings. And so he's very familiar with the tool. And so he takes a picture, brings that in as a layer, and then he's using the pen tool just like you to write over the code and say, okay, look, this one's used like 3 times. It's probably the letter A. Let's put A. Oh, wait, that's not it. Erase it. It's actually an E. Let's change it. And then the guy started hovering over him and they were using it. And so a couple of interesting points why I'm bringing this up is 1, Dungeons and Dragons, but 2, how everyone did approach it using different tools, right? Like Carrie, you're drawing with a marker, and Mandi, you're drawing with Procreate. Imagine someone said to you, no, Mandi, you have to use this number 2 pencil. Put that technology away. Or Carrie, someone said to you, you have to use an iPad and use Procreate. That marker, I don't care that you're comfortable with it. These guys all approached it with different tools they were used to, brainstorming what worked for them. it eventually landed on Procreate that they all went to. Not that they all used it, just the one guy was sort of using it, and then they sort of hovering over his shoulder. But I just think of that in relation to, Mandi, your new job as an assistant principal, or our work in education, is that so often we are dictating the tools to kids, and what we really want is to be giving them options, and then ask them, all right, Mandi, you've been using Procreate, or you've been using Notability. How's that working for you? Well, it's kind of limited. I don't feel like I can do all the things I wanted. Okay, what would you do differently? And then you eventually evolve into Procreate. Same thing with you, Carrie. Well, okay, what are the limitations of taking pictures? Or does it work for you that stack is piling up around your feet? What would you do differently if that's bothering you? Oh, it's not bothering you? You're totally fine with it? Okay. But our job, I feel like, is asking kids reflective questions to help them figure out what tools are the right tools for the job for them.
I agree 100%. And I love how you took what we were doing and related that, because it was a really good example of that. And as you were saying that, I was like, yes, we do that all the time without choice. We do that by saying, here is the tool we want you to use. And even if it doesn't work for you, we still want you to keep using it, which is why I'm a huge advocate of choice in the way that you approach something, because everybody approaches it differently. And I think that's important.
Yeah, well, and I feel like it's got to be authentic choice too, not like, oh yeah, you can choose whether you want to use the red pencil or the green pencil, but you're going to use the pencil. Like it's authentic, and maybe even letting them make a mistake. Like in your mind, you might be thinking, that's not going to work. Oh man, Carrie, why are you using a marker? If you make a mistake, you spell my name wrong, the whole thing is going to be screwed up. Oh, wait, you fixed it. Oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have been thinking. Maybe I shouldn't have been judging you, Carrie, for using your marker. Maybe I should just let you do it and you'll figure it out. Because I could be wrong as an educator. Maybe that is the right tool for you. You know yourself better than I do.
And I think so first of all, you're amazing, because in the way that if people didn't catch what you did, and modeling for everybody how we can as educators be curious and have inquiry. You not only connected with me and Mandi, you made us excited to share with you the thing that we like, that we love, but you did it in a way to connect with us, but you were really gathering information so that you then had more information to offer us more tools, or to understand why we might use our tool. But I think the other thing that came out of our conversation is where teachers get stuck. So you give choice, and that's wonderful. Like, you try to think of all the scenarios kids might want to have as choices. But the thing that's different about the mindset that you shared is then you have to be open for the things that you don't think kids are going to want to try. And when they say they want to try it, we need to lean into the yes, even when we think it's not going to work, because I think that this part of the lesson took me so long in education, because I wanted to prevent my kids with disabilities from struggling. But the struggle is where the learning happens. So they fail. So we take a step back and we talk about it and we move on. Or maybe they fail a lot, but they have to. Otherwise, if they don't think we're listening to them, they're going to have a hard time listening to us. And I'm going to take conversation.
Right. I'm going to take that from another perspective, because Carrie and I taught very different groups of students. And so I, in a lot of my career, taught the students who have always been successful because they were really good at following the rules and jumping through the hoops. And so they are also not used to that productive struggle. They are not used to learning from failures because they haven't experienced failure. And so I think giving them those opportunities to try things and realizing that it may not work and what can you learn from that, it's good for that group of students too, because things are not always going to work out the first time. And I always share an example from my experience. I had a really great friend growing up, elementary and high school. He was the top of our class, very bright student. He went to college pre-pharmacy, got a B, and dropped out of college and never went back because he had never experienced any kind of failure and he couldn't handle it. And so I always would share that with my students and say, I want you to know that mistakes are part of life, that failure is part of life, and we need to learn from them. And so I agree. I think that whole process is so important.
Yeah. What's the expression? Failing forward, or
Yep.
so I had the great fortune of writing a book with 3 other authors called Inclusive Learning 365. And one of those authors, her name's Karen Janowski, taught me this phrase. I don't know if it's her phrase or if she heard it from somebody else, but that's where I learned it, is from Karen Janowski, that fail stands for first attempt in learning, right? Again, maybe that's an old saying, because Mandi, you're nodding like maybe you've heard that before,
too, yeah.
right? But it certainly is a new thought. It still feels to me like a new thought in education, and one that I don't see many educators really embracing, or learners really understanding that that's what school really should be more about. It's not trying to get everything right, but figuring out from your mistakes how to improve.
Yep.
Yes.
I completely agree. And it's the same thing as educators and leaders. I had a really interesting conversation just yesterday about asking for feedback and authentically wanting that feedback.
Yes, it's so hard. That is so hard. Yes.
It is very difficult to do, but if we don't know what's not working, we can't fix it. And so as teachers, as leaders, as anybody in the school, we need to authentically say, please tell me what isn't working and let's work through this solution together, and not be offended by it, which is so hard because it's our human nature. It's our human nature to feel bad when things don't work. Yeah. So we have to rewire our brain to see that as an opportunity and not as something bad.
Well, a couple of thoughts there, Mandi. The first one is educators and learners are not used to someone authentically listening to them, maybe, right? They're just so it's going to take a little bit of time to develop that trust, right? And then again, with sort of the thinking about the language we use with failing, first attempt in learning, something I hear leaders say quite a bit is, people need to feel like they're heard. People need to feel like we're listening to them. And I'm like, no, they just need to be listened to. So it's not the illusion that we're listening to them. We're actually listening to them, right? They need to be heard. We need to listen to them, they need to feel like they're being listened to, if that makes sense. I feel like little adjustments in our language can really help shape our mindset.
Agreed.
I agree. Wasn't even a question, and look where that went. I love it. Makes me happy.
Me too. All right, let's catch us off guard a little bit. Annabeth, go ahead and pull another one.
What TV show are you hooked on or were recently hooked on?
Oh, well, okay. So it's an interesting question. Immediately what jumps to my mind is that I was a huge and am a huge Game of Thrones fan. And so the House of the Dragon is probably the most recent show that I've been, it's a show where I watched it, of course, like made an appointment on Sundays to watch it. And then also downloaded the podcast and listened to that on Mondays to hear people like that. It's very rare that I go deep with a show like that, but being Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and that kind of liking that, I really, I gravitated to that show. That said, we're huge. The Bugaj household is huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fans and Star Wars fans, and everything, nerd culture is totally us. So my son and I are currently watching Secret Invasion. We've watched all the Marvel shows and try and make, if we don't, it's always a conversation in our house. Like, are we watching this together? Are we watching separate and then talking about it afterwards? But it's always sort of in our sphere as talking about Marvel, Star Wars, and then fantasy stuff. So I was a huge fan of the Dungeons and Dragons movie, by the way. That was super fun and lighthearted, and just so captured what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. Like these kind of wild escapades of made up nonsense. It was fun.
I enjoyed that movie as well. And I know enough about Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the mechanics of it. I've never played it, but I do use a lot of the mechanics in my game that I have in my classroom. But the movie was just, it's so fun.
Well, Carrie, I remember back in the day, you did the whole Padawan Jedi thing. Are you still doing that, or has it evolved?
It has evolved. So we're on year 8 of it, believe it or not. And so now it's a whole galaxy. It takes up 2 bulletin boards in my classroom. And so now students are, they're adventurers, and so of space, and they get a sheet, like a player sheet from Dungeons and Dragons, and they pick their name, and then they pick the role they want. So they can be like a captain or a medic or whatever. And then depending on what they pick, I took children's Dungeons and Dragons sheets and used some of those powers or the points or whatever it's called. Yep. And then depending on what they pick, that's what they get for like intelligence or strength. And so it's fun to talk to the kids about that. And then they use that sheet to gather items, and I've made it very pictorial. So as they're leveling up, they just cross off, they circle items that they've purchased or earned. And then as they travel through the galaxy, they get to collect items on another pictorial sheet. Yeah, I could go on forever. I'm not, but this is about you, Chris.
Well, I just want to say that is about me because I really love the gamification of it. I feel like it illustrates to kids that there's everyone has different abilities, and quantifying it and symbolizing it with pictures helps make it visual for them and gives multiple modalities for how to understand that. It's real easy for like by second grade to get down on yourself, like, oh, some kids are better readers than I am. Like realizing that people have different strengths is a hard thing to do. So like making it visual and quantifying it is such an excellent strategy. And then school itself can be so like,
yes,
why do I have to go there? But when you're doing this fun exploration, story-based, gamified, like you want to be there, you want to level yourself up, you want to grow, you want to see what's around the next star system. It just helps realize that growth is possible.
Agreed. And that's totally my hope. I also find that, especially with a lot of the students that you and I generally work with, games are left out of people's minds. And I feel like that's often, and I know Mandi loves board games, so I can, we're not going to bore her with this. But I think as actually, you know what, educators in general underplay the opportunity games give us to teach skills that we will never be able to bring into the classroom. Right. And that's one of the reasons why I love gamification. It's why I love playing board games with my students. It also, I think by the time my kids get to middle school, some of them have been through every behavior modification system and incentive thing that you can think of, but a game is just it hits a little bit different, and it's just such a fun way for the kids that need that as a motivator to have that. And the ones that don't need it for a motivator, it's there to just amplify their learning experience,
Well, you know what? I feel it hits all the C's, right? It helps you become a better communicator. Certainly tweaks the creative element, being a creator, the community aspect of playing a game. And it sounds like you're working with kids that are in an environment together, right? So building a community, but then also maybe the things you're doing for part of the game in the storytelling element might be about helping someone or in some way. So it just feels like, critical thinking, right? Mm-hmm. It helps you problem solve. I mean, it just hits everything in a way that most kids want to do it. They want to be there. It doesn't feel like you have to force it. And I just wish maybe people watching this be like, yeah, maybe that'll be my thing. Like we're recording this now in the summer, right? But as people come back in the fresh start of the school year, like maybe I can try and gamify some of my elements of my my educational experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and one more thing that just popped in my head too. I think the other thing that people forget about games is sometimes it hits a skill set in kids so maybe they can't read as well. But man, when you get them on Mario Kart, they're going to kick your butt because they're really good at that. Or maybe they're not very good at math, but you play a board game with them and their ability to see turns ahead or whatever and strategize, it's just amazing. And so it's fun, just an opportunity to let kids shine in a lot of different ways, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. And also it goes back to wrapping up what Mandi said too about the frustration level. Games are frustrating. but they're the game and it's the rules. And so it's frustrating in a different way, but it's also it also offers a frustrating opportunity to work through. And I love that about games too.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, again, at the risk of harping on Dungeons and Dragons, that's exactly why we advocate to use it because it's such role play. So the way it works is that you play a character, right? And your character is going through this fictitious story. So imagine a scenario where this sort of in real life, a kid is working through a social emotional regulation strategies, right? And what they really are doing is getting angry at other people, and they're trying to learn how to control that anger. Well, in this fictitious story, their character comes across the mean orc tribe and the orc or group or gang or something, and they come up to them, and the character says, I want to punch him in the face. I want to punch this orc captain in the face. Well, you can do that in the story because now as the educator, you can be like, all right, here's what's going to happen. If you punch that guy in the face, what do you think the consequences are? Well, the whole group might start attacking my friends. Okay, well, now you're into a giant brawl. Are you sure you want to do it? I mean, you can if you want to do that. It's your story. Oh, then someone else goes, well, what if we drew them a picture and tried to explain? Maybe it's a communication issue. Let's draw some pictures. Maybe they can't understand us. Suddenly you're brainstorming options, and you can play through scenarios that, again, in real life. I went down to Miss Mandi, the assistant principal, because I was brought down there because I was acting up behavior and I just wanted to lash out at her. But because we've practiced in this fictitious role-playing scenario, you've already thought through the consequences of what some of those negative actions might be. And you can now learn, okay, in a very safe, controlled, authentic in that it's a game you're playing, but still a meaningful way, before something negative happens. It's a great way to teach those skills.
I love that. You ready, Annabeth? Mm-hmm.
What got you into speech pathology, and how did it lead to becoming an assistive technology specialist and trainer?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So, yes, my background is speech language pathology. And a couple of years ago.
As many as Mandi and I've been teaching. Easy.
Yeah. When I graduated high school, I went to Finland as an exchange student for...
I wondered why that was there, and I was going to ask a question, but I wasn't sure. So this is yay.
So when I was in Finland, it really quickly, I realized I didn't really need to learn Finnish. Most of the people there didn't want me to learn Finnish. I mean, they wouldn't care if I learned it or didn't learn it. They was always happy to teach me Finnish, but I was going to come back to the States, and when was I going to use Finnish in the United States, right? It was really important for them to learn English because they were that's the language there when they go to Sweden and they go to Russia and other neighboring areas. So anyway, long story short, they wanted me to speak English. And as I was listening to them speak English, I started to find that there were some common mistakes that people would make as they were learning English. So one thing in particular was the word thing and the word think. They would confuse those all the time. That think over there, that's the think that I want. Are you saying thing? Yeah, yes, that's what I mean, thing. And it got me sort of interested. And it wasn't just like one person. It was like my mom made that mistake. My brothers made that mistake. My friends made that mistake. It was a consistent thing that people in Finland were making. And I was like, that's interesting. Why is it that they are making that mistake? And so then I started to break it down. Well, okay, let's think about it. Let's think about it. That a K and a G, the sounds, like if you were to do that with your tongue, your tongue moves in the exact same place to make those sounds. The only difference is your vocal cords, one is voiced, the g, make your vocal cords hit together, and the k keeps it open. The air comes through. It's your tongue that's pulsating the sound. So point being, everything's the same in my articulators. The only thing that is different is my voice, which having not taken any speech classes or really thinking about how my speech or anyone else's speech worked, I kind of realized that they were similar sounds. But that was only one level. Ready? Here's the second level. A thing and a think conceptually are pretty similar. Anything you can think is a thing, and anything is something you can think of. Like on a mental cognitive language way, those words are very related. So it makes total sense that when you're trying to use that in fluent English, you might be your articulators might make a mistake, or your brain might confuse those two words. So coming back from Finland, it's like, what can I study about language and our speech patterns? And then I came across speech language pathology in Fredonia, the State University of New York at Fredonia, and started taking speech language pathology courses there. And the very first class was all about language development, and I was hooked right from the beginning. It was awesome. I started loving the science behind it. I loved the aspect of helping other people, and then so that's the first part. That's how I got interested in speech language pathology, was really that think phenomenon. But then from there, I went on to get my master's, and then I got my job for Loudoun County Public Schools. By the way, Mandi, you nailed it. That's exactly how you say it, Loudoun. So I got my job my first, professional job was as a speech language pathologist in Loudoun County Public Schools. And I was there for 3 years working as a speech therapist in one of the elementary schools. And during that time, technology was sort of evolving, and I sort of liked using it in my therapy. What I mean by technology, ready for this? It was like a digital camera that was like this big, had the big 3x5 floppy that you would slip in, and you could hold like maybe 20 pictures and maybe 10-second video that you could take. So I was using this technology and trying to figure it out. I was also doing like old school VHS cameras and doing video modeling so kids could watch their language. And anyway, so we were doing I was doing all sort of this fun stuff, and people kind of saw that I wasn't afraid of the technology. So about 3 years into my career, my supervisor at the time said, we are putting together an assistive technology team. We'd like to be multidisciplinary. So we want some occupational therapists, we want some special ed teachers, and we want a speech language pathologist. Would you be interested? And I was like, yes, I would love to do something like that, like go deeper into how technology works with us. And so I was one of the founding members of our assistive technology team, which again, we're closing in on 25 years of that thing existing. And I've never looked back. Like as the technology evolves and I see it as a tool for helping provide options for more learners, I just keep getting deeper and deeper into how we can design instructional experiences using technology that can be designed for everybody. So that's my story.
I love it.
Do we want another question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I was like, oh, are we already at time? No, we're not.
No, not even. We got lots of more time for more questions.
More Chris.
Okay. Barovian vampire, Groot, Dumbledore, 20-sided die. What makes a great Halloween costume? And better yet, what is the key to a great family-themed Halloween costume?
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. So Halloween is big in the Bugaj household, and I love dressing up in costumes. I've done it my entire career. I feel like as a speech language pathologist, in fact, going back to that very first class I took at the State University of New York, Fredonia, in speech language pathology, my professor, his name was John Onyefrak. I'll never forget. He said, the speech language pathologist should be the wackiest person in the building, because nobody talks about the mundane, right? Like, Carrie, you and Annabeth get together and you're like, hey, Annabeth, what'd you do at school today? Annabeth, what do you say? What'd you do at school today?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? And you're not wrong. There's nothing necessarily noteworthy to talk about. But that day when somebody fell and they skinned their knee, or the bat got into the auditorium and was flying around, or this wacky thing happened, now you're like, oh my gosh, Mom, let me tell you about this, blah, blah, blah. So-and-so did this thing that sort of you didn't expect to happen and it happened. That's what we talk about, right? Not the boring, mundane. So as a speech language pathologist, his point was, if you really want to build language experiences for people, you can't be boring. You got to do stuff sort of weird and wacky. And so like, what's weird and wacky? Bringing it back to costumes is I loved dressing up, painting my face blue and wearing a Stitch hat and Stitch gloves, or dressing up like a robot, and that certainly the time of year that we can all do that is, we can do it anytime, but is during Halloween. And that love of dressing up in costumes and taking on a persona of some other character sort of bled out into my family. And we do it we've been doing it for every Halloween. And in fact, literally this morning, I texted my daughter, I saw something on TikTok where we've been talking, what are we going to do for Halloween this upcoming year? How can we level up our game? And we saw these people make 3D sculptures out of foam boards. So, which I hadn't put it together, but I was like, of course. So they take these thin foam boards and they layer them on top of each other. And then they carve. So now you've got this thick 3D thing, right? And then you take little saws and knives and you cut out the foam to be whatever this is, right? And then you can cover it with paper mache or paint or whatever. And so we've been talking about, like, do we make my daughter really this past year, she was like, let's make like a Seussical sort of experience where people come to our house and there's like a Dr. Seuss theme. Specifically, she wanted to do, what's the one with saving the trees?
Lorax.
Lorax, yes, right. And there's, who's the guy in the green suit? The Wenzel? Is it the?
I don't know.
Well, whatever. I would dress up like that. My daughter would dress up as the Lorax. Like, but like, would people get it? Like, they need to see like the trees, what is it? Huffalump tree? What do they call? Why can't I think of the names of the tree? Doesn't matter. But could we make
fluffy ones?
Yeah, with the, what I'm talking about, with the pom poms at the top that all get cut down. What are they called, Annabeth?
I called them fluffy trees.
We don't know.
Truffula trees?
Truffula, maybe that's it. Yeah, the truffula trees.
That sounds right.
So anyway, long story short, that's what we're sort of brainstorming. I saw this and I sent her the TikTok this morning. Like, maybe this is what we can work on over the summer and get ready for Halloween, is we can make these 3D truffula trees out of this foam board. So the other quick story that I'll tell with the Halloween theme is that it's in relation to how do you make a family theme, is desperation can sometimes create and cause innovation. So once upon a time, we lived in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and the kids were on a school schedule in West Virginia, and my wife and I were on a school schedule here in Virginia. We were right across the border, but we were on two different schedules, and it was really hard to try and be on the same schedule. So we thought, okay, we have to move back to Loudoun and get our kids in the same schedule in the same school district that we're in. And so we did. And for a while, we had two mortgages because we were selling our house in West Virginia and we had a house here in Virginia. And we were like, literally, if you could picture, like scraping for pennies that have fallen in your car seat, sort of like, where are we, how much can we? And so, because we were really holding things together with, gum.
Pennies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So long story short, Halloween comes along. A tree had fallen down at our old house. It had smashed everywhere. And I took all the bark that had fallen off this tree, packed it up into the car, brought it here to the new house. And this is just when Guardians of the Galaxy came out. And I built this entire Groot costume. even bit the bullet and bought this like cheap wire that had these little lights that would light up, because if you remember the first Guardians movie, Groot like can shine these little lights and they float everywhere. And then we were like, well, Guardians came out. Tucker, my son, was going to be Star-Lord, and Maggie became Rocket. We convinced my wife to dress as Gamora, painted her all green, and that the very first. So we did that, and just for fun. But then we found out that our local town was having the very first ever in this town Halloween extravaganza sort of thing, where you all go to the central town and kind of walk around. So we're like, well, let's go in our costumes. So we did, and we're walking around. You see, there's a costume contest. There was actually a number of contests, like best costume, best group costume. There was a howl at the moon experience where kids get up and they would howl at the moon and they would rate them and give. Turns out, when we were desperately in need of just a little extra cash for the cash flow, we won the best costume. Groot won best costume. The kids and I won, and Melissa won. My wife won best group costume for Guardians of the Galaxy, and we won $500. We just expected to go down there and walk around. We came out with $500, which helped us actually make the mortgage payments that particular month, because things were razor tight. So it's a long answer to share some fun stories. I think having in the same theme that we've been talking about, having some sort of group buy-in and brainstorm can really help everybody embrace this notion of not just dressing up, but being the characters for a small part of time. Like, can you think of, Carrie or Mandi or Annabeth, what have you dressed up as stuff for Halloween? Have you come up with certain themes? What have you done?
So my kids and I love to dress up for Halloween. And I can't say that we have done a theme ourselves, but we have definitely had like specific themes. So my son, I have 4 children, and my son is the youngest, and my son loves to create costumes. He has always been a very creative person, but he uses cardboard, foam board, duct tape, and he created a working Iron Man, where he used LED lights, and like the helmet would come down and the lights would light up. So he loves to create, and some of my favorite costumes have been for him and with him. So Marty McFly was his favorite. I don't know how many years in a row he was Marty McFly with the red puffy vest and the works. And so he would always find people to be part of it with him. So one year, one of his friends was Doc, and they have pictures together. One year he was David Tennant with Doctor Who. And my oldest daughter was River Song. And so I made her the River Song outfit. And then I made his suit because we couldn't find one to fit him. And also we didn't have a lot of money at the time. And so I just took some fabric that I had laying around. I actually used a white paint pen, and drew the pinstripes on the suit and made him a suit. And so, yes, my kids love to dress up. I mean, and they're older now, but they still love to dress up. And so, I mean, one time I made for school for homecoming, I made a Hobbit costume, and I actually took socks and painted them flesh colored and drew the toes in. And then I put hair on them for my Hobbit feet, and I wore them around all day. So, yep, I like to dress up too.
Right, because it's so fun and kids react to
It
it,
is.
right? And
Yeah,
you get that language from them and that excitement. It makes school fun. What about you, Carrie? What have you dressed up as?
So I'm not a huge Halloween fan, but I think the theme in our house that's similar to both of yours is, I feel like when the money's tight, that's when the best Halloween costumes happen. Like who was the zombie? You or T?
Me.
Annabeth, either her costume failed one year or we just were tight.
Yeah, I failed.
Or Annabeth couldn't decide.
Yeah.
It's probably all of those. An hour before we're going to go trick-or-treating, we took one of the shirts out of my closet, tore it up, and I love doing like bruise makeup. Like, it's just because it's easy, because all you have to do is mess up makeup, right? Annabeth was the best zombie.
Well, let me ask you this, since we're talking about this, like here we are in an art show, right, where you're drawing, and dressing up in costumes is sort of a form of art. Putting makeup on and making is a form of art. Have you explored, Carrie, Annabeth, and Mandi, sort of mixed media with your drawings or with your art, where you're adding a 3D element, cardboard, glitter to the drawings, that sort of thing? Like everything is two-dimensional right now that we're doing, but tell me more of your experiences around 3 dimensions.
You know, that it's almost like you're a genius. Last week on our Doodle and Chat, we call the first Doodle and Chat of the month Doodle and Chat Classy, because it's a class activity. And I saw you looking, Mandi, did you find yours?
I'll go grab it. It's really close.
We did a 3D sketch note last week. But your idea of the mixed medium is something that Mandi and I are really trying to, I mean, I don't know if other people are doing it, but we are really striving to stretch what people think of when it comes to sketchnoting, and that it's not just a two-dimensional thing option. And taking, I think what we're doing is exactly what you do too, right? Like take the tools you have in front of you and see how you can apply this mindset to it. And so our mindset is, how can we connect visual thinking and doodling to learn to anything? And so that's, so yes, we are trying to stretch people's concept of what they think sketchnoting is in the classroom.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're really thinking in 3 dimensions is like a level up in my mind, and can really help visualize things. So that what you just showed, Mandi, how awesome is that? And like so you're using paper. What other elements have you used?
Paper and Sharpie. I mean, scissors, we just cut it out and then glued or taped it on. And so this was the Detroit artist, Charlie McGee. And this was, so we actually tied a lesson about Charles McGee into this so the students could learn about this author or this artist. And so a lot of people do this art project. Carrie and I were like, we could make this a cool class activity for sketchnoting where you could tie images and words together, which is what we want to do in the sketchnote, but in a way that allows us to use some of those tactile skills. We always talk about if we can get kids to use the scissors and cutting them out, that's such an important skill. But just the whole thing together, like this activity made me so happy. It was fun to do. The end product is something that students can be proud of. And we talked about how many times we were looking at the words that we were doing, because obviously as you're drawing them, you're looking at them, but as you're taping them down, you're looking at them. And then if you're displaying them in the classroom, and so you are just reinforcing that information in a way that isn't boring.
Yes, that's fun. That's bringing the joy to the experience.
Yeah.
So, and there a slew of ideas that came out of that activity too, as Mandi and I create together. But yeah, we're really striving to hit all the modalities when it comes to sketchnoting, and then just getting people to think about how you can take this simple idea and really apply it to anything. Because we also want, more teachers to use it, but we also want more students to have access to it. And so the more we create together, hopefully, the more ideas we have.
Can I ask, do you find in your work and in your activism around sketchnoting that it's still such a new concept to so many people? Like you talk about it and be like, I've never, what do you mean? What's a sketchnote? Do you still find that, or you find that in your sphere, no, most people know it now?
So I remember when I first started, like people were terrified to like even think about putting a pen to paper. And I find that, and it's really refreshing. I find nowadays teachers are significantly more fearless when it comes to that. And that makes me really happy. It's just now I think it's bridging that gap between, I know this thing is really cool, but I'm still scared to bring it into my classroom and I'm not sure how, because they think it's going to be this daunting task. Probably similar to a lot of the efforts that you make with technology and supporting students, because one thing is good for everybody, right?
Yeah.
The same thing for sketchnoting. It doesn't have to be this big production. It could just be one thing, and then it's good for every lesson. So
fail forward. Make
mistakes
things. And fail forward.
What's that?
Make mistakes and fail forward.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like sometimes I think people see this big picture and it's scary. And all I want you to do is just draw an icon next to a word after you finish reading, like it doesn't have to be this really big task, I'm sure you face that as well with supporting, students in the classroom with technology and things like that. Like, it doesn't have to be a whole makeover, right? Like, just add an audiobook,
Right. Baby steps.
The other thing with sketchnoting is you are actually hitting an insecurity with a lot of people, because they will say, I can't sketchnote because I can't draw.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Carrie doesn't necessarily like when I say this, but Carrie and I have very different styles of drawing. And I kind of like showing, I mean, am I as gifted of an artist as Carrie? No. But do I still get the idea across on my paper in my style, in my way? I do. And I think it's important for people to see the different levels of that too, that my sketch note is just as valuable for me as Carrie's is to her. And that's okay. You don't have to be awesome at it. It's how you connect the images and the words together for you. And I think that's important.
Agreed.
Can I say, I still find a large number of teachers, when I mention it as a strategy, who've never even heard of it. Like, what's that? And I have to bring up a Google image search, and they say, oh, you mean like intentionally doodling to learn stuff? Yeah. Oh, like that still seems like a new concept for a lot of people. And that's what I'm curious. Do you find you're still introducing it just as a concept to a lot of people, or in your world and in your work, you're finding that people have, no, I know what it is, I'm scared about it, and then you're just getting them over it?
Probably a little bit of both, but it's interesting that you're still running into people, because sometimes I don't know if this happens to you as a content creator, but sometimes I feel like people have heard it before, at some point they're going to get exhausted about hearing about the little nuances, like the things I did 5 years ago, but maybe, it's just a good reminder for us as educators, the things that we might not think are important are still important, the things that we know that we need to share that, or we need to continuously access it, I guess, and share it.
Well, Carrie, 2 comments there. First is that, you mentioned I got to write a couple books, and one of my books is called The New Assistive Tech. The second edition is coming out. So it's available for pre-order now, ding, in Amazon. But there's a section of that called The Rule of 22. And the idea there is, I was getting frustrated with technology, with people not implementing technology. I showed you this awesome thing. How come you're not doing this awesome thing that I showed you the one time I showed you? And it sort of relates back to the question that was asked, Annabeth asked, pulled out of the bowl, was, what's your favorite TV show? Well, why do people gravitate to a certain show? Well, maybe it's because someone has told you 22 times. Like, I didn't go and watch this show. Oh, you really got to watch the show Beef on Netflix. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does that mean you run home and watch it the next night? No. Mandy has to mention it, and then Mandy or Carrie, you're on with the next guest at the next Doodle and Chat, and they mention the Beef, and before you know it, 22 times you've heard it, and you're like, I really am going to check out this show now, right? Well, the same thing happens with technology or strategies like this. Is like, it's probably not the first time you hear sketchnoting that you certainly just pick it up. That's what I'm doing tomorrow. But maybe it's 22 times. And as content creators and educators and leaders, it's our role is to try and get it to you 22 times. That's what I call the rule of 22. I allow myself to get frustrated with somebody else if I've presented it to them 22 times. If they haven't seen it 22 times from me, then it's on me to get it to them to the threshold of 22. Now, there's no magic. It could be 23 or 24. I'm just 22 because it's in the same way that the show starts at 9:33 Central, right? The number sticks in your head, 22, not 20 times or 30 times, but this sort of odd number. The point being, it's on me to get it to you in multiple modalities 22 times.
I like that. But also, like, let's realize, let's bring that into reality as teachers. Like, when we get frustrated with kids, that's how many times,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing real quick. I'm going to say that when it comes to technology or sketchnoting or any sort of strategy that you use, you might introduce it to a kid and they say, no, thank you.
Yep.
No, thank you. And that doesn't mean no thank you. It just means no thank you for right now.
Yes.
It doesn't mean no thank you forever. You may have shown something to Annabeth now. Like, Mom, I'm never going to do it. No. I said no. And then somewhere 3 years, 4 years from now in college, you know what? This educator guy came to me and he said, there's this little thing on this technology. Do you have that for me? Or what is it? Like, maybe in the future they'll be ready for it. And again, maybe that's a longer version of the rule of 22. Like, drops were put in a bucket back when I was in 4th grade. And the rule of 22 is working along as I get to, and eventually when I'm in college or doing my own learning beyond school, that's when I've adopted the sketchnoting. Is now I'm ready for it. Now I'm ready for learning this piece of technology. Not now does not mean not forever.
I love it.
All right, are you ready to see what I drew?
Yes.
I see. It's so interesting because people can see you in real time, but they can't see. I don't have a camera here, so you don't know. Real quick. So, Mandi, what do you think I drew?
I think you drew something with Dungeons and Dragons, something in the, like, with your imagination. So in my world, I call it my nerdy world.
Yeah. I take that as a term of affection.
Yes, me too.
Nerdy. Okay, so you think I drew something related to Dungeons and Dragons right out of my imagination?
Yes.
Okay. Carrie, what do you think I drew?
Well, I would say that you do the ATCast microphone and then draw around it, but that's kind of really like a legendary part of your life. It's not now. Well, it's kind of part of your new podcast, the microphone.
True. The Talking with Tech podcast, by the way, yes, all about students who use augmentative and alternative communication, well, people in general, but helping them learn how to use communication devices. Me and Rachel Madel.
Yes. So what do I think now? I got to think about that. I don't know. Maybe all the questions that you asked and then I gave our answers. Maybe you flipped it around and you Doodle and Chatted us.
Well, I did find that the conversation sort of weaved out in and out of me and you and just education in general. I'm going to show it to you now and see. Here's what you think. So it is a monster. So, Mandi, it's a monster, right? With a giant smile to illustrate the joy of learning, right? But then all the little things we talked about, like there's a game, there's the truffle tree, there's a smile for speech language pathology. There's some representation of technology with some sort of device. Then what do we got over here? There's a little D20, Dungeons and Dragons 20-sided dice. 3D for the 3D elements of the conversation. A little glass. Here we go. Yeah. So that's what I drew. A little monster with giant eyes looking at all the different stuff that we talked about.
Holy wow.
That's cool. Yeah.
I wish you could have seen my smile. My cheeks hurt. That's fabulous.
Maybe after we're done here, I'll color them in a certain color or make each eye stalk a different color or something. I just got the quick black background on it, but I so appreciate the time we spent today in our conversation, giving me the opportunity to draw this little guy. How fun was this? It was awesome.
So fun. Thank you so much, Chris, for being a part of Doodle and Chat with us.
Yes, this was so much fun. I enjoyed so much learning about you and talking with you. And I appreciate how you interact with others. Like it was a lovely experience today.
He's a wise man, isn't he? He just
Yes.
sprinkled all his knowledge on us. And we didn't even know what we were getting into. We thought we're bringing the bull that knows, and we got this all covered. And Chris just sprinkled all of his just magic on us and brought out conversations and through questioning and did everything that makes him an amazing educator.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for doing this show. Keep it up. It's super fun. And again, invite me to come back sometime because I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Doodle and Chat friends, if you were here with us today, please snap a picture of your Doodle and Chat and share it out on Twitter or Instagram or now Threads. But Threads doesn't have hashtags. Anyways, and use hashtag Doodle and Chat so we can share with the world all the fun that we have here every Saturday morning at 9:33 Central Standard Time. And we'll see you next Saturday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.